Unified Education Service Center. Well,
Bev Medor.
Here.
George Chasconier. Jake Terrio. Here. Andy Cody. Here. Josh Sharp. Here. Toby Chandro.
Here.
Tom Kent.
Here.
Rose McCory.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
Ms. Bev, I introduced you as a new member last meeting, but you weren't here.
I know, I saw it on TV.
Oh, we all had, did you see the standing ovation?
I knew me on TV.
Okay. Did you see the standing ovation from the board?
I noticed nobody missed me. I was really upset.
Welcome, Ms. Bev.
Thank you.
Any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments to the agenda.
Period of public participation on items on this agenda. Anybody sign up? Anybody in the audience want to speak?
Paul, you good?
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut for now.
Okay, we'll go minutes.
So moved.
Barry and Gerard, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? Sorry, Gary and Gerard, not Barry. Have it. Director.
So I just wanted to give you all an update on the Valley United Concerned Citizens versus Valley Unified Education Service Center. I had a conversation with Kate Grossman last week, and she did kind of give me the timetable, and I may have in our notes here I may have made some errors because she was speaking very quickly, and I'm not very good at writing, and so what I understood was after we filed that motion to dismiss, there's 21 days for the plaintiff to file an opposition of that motion, and then we can respond to that after. So she says, and then at that point in time, the courts may decide to do some different things. So she said best case scenario 2-3 weeks before we hear anything about that. So in the meantime, I'm working with her to start collecting some artifacts that may go into the exhibit, the record, if we get to that point. So we're just in the collection of stuff right now phase. As soon as I know more, I'll let you know. One nice thing about every Valley Unified meeting and every site selection meeting, there was a video recording of every single one, so that's all going to be entered in the record as well.
Administrator reports.
Do I have any administrators who are reporting out? No, we don't have.
Policy review.
This is your second read of these policies. The first one is BDD, Board Superintendent Relationship. Again, boilerplate. Replace the words school board with executive board if that need be. Replace superintendent with superintendent executive director. But these are just boilerplates. So that first one is our relationship. The second one is in respect to the service center board meetings and how our meetings, the type of meetings we can have, regular, special, and emergency, very similar to what we currently have for our school boards. And then the third one is BEBH, which is the public participation one that you've all seen at your board level, and then this one as well. Last time we were here, I had left out, I had made a little error on item F, and I've corrected that. All speakers are to address the chair. No, it's not F. It was D. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers. So it doesn't talk about anything other than the chair recognizes that. So those are the three policies you are approving, hopefully tonight.
I make a motion to accept the second read of policy BDD, policy BE, and policy BEH.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. phase 2, old business, sorry.
Yep, so under old business, we did table last time the phase 2 engineering, which is the concept design. During our last meeting, I asked the board if we are to move forward with WBRC, who were the firm that did our phase 1. I've reached out to Ray from WBRC to let him know that this board still has not made that determination yet. So they know that that is on the table. If need be, Ray would be prepared to come to this board and present or represent their qualifications for the concept design if we would need them to. So I've just put that out there. Otherwise than that, I'll leave it to the board to decide how to proceed. I do want to just remind that I don't know how close we are to concept design, just because there are questions that are unanswered. I've reached out to the commissioner in an email to see if she can provide us in writing her guidance on how things are to proceed with respect to the governance that we're going to cover in a minute. I believe my question was, will she allow this project to move forward into phase 2, knowing that we are working on governance, or is it her expectation that we figure out governance first, kind of as a new phase 2 before we get to the concept design? I have not received a reply yet, so I know she's very busy with this coronavirus stuff, and I'm sure she's buried deep. So I expect when she has time, she'll reply. So that's where we are.
This might be the time. I have a question on that. Did you have a meeting scheduled with Scott Brown? Was that canceled, or did
We had a meeting scheduled with Scott Brown that was supposed to be held on February 28th.
Was it canceled?
It was canceled, and it was canceled because of the governance piece. So I had reported out to that on the meeting that you weren't here, Bev,
okay.
that we were supposed to go down. The governance now was the new thing on the table that was kind of slowing everything. So Ray from WBRC was able to connect via the phone with Scott Brown. They were able to talk about our straw polls and that type of thing, but they weren't going to have us go down there to just talk about governance, because that's something that we have to resolve, not the state.
Is that meeting going to be rescheduled?
We have to have those meetings as the engineering continues. So when the engineering goes a little bit further, we're going to have that meeting. And I believe right now we have our attorney looking at the purchase and sale agreements. They've already scheduled the appraisals of the land, and then when those things are done, I believe at that time Scott will call another meeting.
But the fact that you've contacted the commissioner and you haven't heard from her, does that stall the whole process, or is she involved in what's going on to this point?
There's a whole lot of that I don't know. I don't know if it's the state board who's going to make a determination of whether. I don't know who's calling the shots right now. All I know is I don't know a whole lot. And so I'm hoping to get some clarification soon so that I can tell you guys.
Tell us what.
Yeah.
Now, if that gets rescheduled, that meeting with Scott Brown, is that you and Giselle that go down to that, or do anybody from this board or the other boards go to that meeting?
We can talk about the future of that. In the past, every meeting that we've had has been me, Giselle, Peter, and Lucy. We have been the ones to go down to those meetings.
So
and those are all part of the engineering contract that we have. So in our engineering contract with WBRC, there are reporting meetings that occur as part of that. And really, it's just a formality to have us there. We're not making any decisions. We're just there to listen to the engineering firm report out to the state about what's happened so far.
I think what I'm asking is that if it should come to the point of where some board members from either Fort Kent, Madawaska, or Frenchville, St. Agatha are interested in going, I would hope that it would be opened up to all boards.
I think every one of our boards has the right to ask for any kind of meeting they want. I have reached out to the commissioner since our last Valley Unified Board meeting upon her possible request to come up to the area. I'm hopeful that she will still take us up on that offer, come up here and possibly talk to this board or representatives from each our board if we so choose.
Okay, thank you.
Ben, Board of Education had a meeting today, correct?
I don't.
Wasn't it today, they were meeting?
No schedule.
The state board, the full state board?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could very well be. Yeah.
And what transpired, anyone know?
There was nothing on the agenda about, there was a committee report concerning construction on there, but as far as approval of anything, there was nothing on that.
There was so the State Board of Education has committees, and they do have a construction committee. Mr. Jandro brought to my attention that they actually met on February 28th. So I have since asked for unofficial minutes from that, and I have not received those yet. But we're interested in what happened at that subcommittee meeting. As for the full State Board, Mr. Sylvia, I believe you're right. I believe they did meet today. And my internet's crawling, so I'll confirm that in a minute.
How often? It's not
Monthly.
every month, is it?
It's usually monthly. Yeah, they're scheduled for meetings. Yeah, March 11. Then they'll meet April 15, May 13. So it's every month. Today's agenda for the meeting was Commissioner's report, Connect Me Broadband Access, board member reports, Chapter 15 board priorities, board annual retreat, experiential steamroller bus tour, lunch, and then a business meeting. So it doesn't seem like
Business agendas, maybe.
oh, the business agenda.
If we ever complain about how long our meetings are, here, look at this meeting.
Yeah, so under the business agenda, they did have the standing committees report out, and school construction was one of those standing committees reported out. Those minutes, will come available online once they are approved, so I can keep an eye on that to see what was on there. But I don't see anything else that would have been related to our project. I'm pretty sure I would have been notified, but again, I know that I don't know a lot, so.
Given the status of the governance and what the commissioners relayed to you, basically, that it's kind of on hold until we get that all straightened out. There's also the advice of our attorney for MS 8027 that as far as like moving forward on anything until we have that straightened out, we probably really should not be voting on.
I don't know, yeah, and I don't know that we would be bringing anything to this board to move forward, because, I mean, right now, the site selection stuff is still ongoing, and like I said a while ago, appraisals and all of that, that's nothing that this board has to vote on. It's just all part of the process that, that happens anyway. The governance piece, as I mentioned a while ago, I would like the commissioner, hopefully soon, to give us guidance on what exactly she feels that, and we're going to be talking about the governance language a little bit, and part of that process is going to be that we have to file something with her office in order to get to let her know that we're actually working on governance language. So that might be something at our next meeting, or if we were to hold a special meeting between now and our next meeting, that we would have to agree on to get that governance language ball rolling.
Would that make a difference in us talking about who's doing the next phase?
I think going with the next phase is for me at this point in time just a courtesy to WBRC, or to let them know yes or not, because I'm sure a firm like them, if they knew they weren't getting this, they would start entertaining other bid proposals from other projects, probably on a larger scale. If we kind of hold them to not knowing, I don't know that that's fair to them. I would just like to extend a courtesy to them. Again, I'm not forcing this board to make a decision tonight, but eventually, you know, when we get to this phase, I know that they'll probably, you know, start front loading some work in the background so that, you know, they're not, they're ready for us when we're ready for this phase.
So if we retain their services, our money's gonna be exchanged to say,
No,
no?
nothing, they'd have to draft a contract for phase 2, and that's a whole process in itself, and the DOE would have to vet that contract, and there's no actual funds that go to them until work is done, and that's always done. They give us an invoice after a month worth of work, so the payments only come after the work is done.
Okay.
Oh, is it okay if I call them all?
Can the public talk on agenda items, or it's just a question?
Generally no, but I'll let you, go ahead.
That's not what I read in the paper.
Public can speak on agenda items.
Yeah,
During the time of public speech, but you can go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, well, I didn't know what was gonna
No,
come.
you're good, you're good.
No, question, going to Bev's question, as far as, I understand we can't move forward until this governance issue is settled. In your conversations with the commissioner, do you sense any, you know, hurry up and make a decision attitude from her, or?
So I just want to make it clear, I don't have regular conversations with the commissioner. The last conversation I had with her is when we were actually in Portland and she met with our team. I've exchanged a couple of emails with her on various different topics, but the message about governance did not come directly from the commissioner. It came from Scott Brown via a conversation with the Attorney General. So there's always a different chain of how they're going to deliver a message. But the final message that we did receive from Scott Brown saying, we're probably not going to be able to move forward with this, this phase 2 because the governance thing is a huge deal. So I really have nothing to show this board that this is what the commissioners or the state board says. And that's what I'm looking for, because right now there's a whole lot of hearsay. And I'm just waiting for someone to tell me proof so that I can show it. Because I don't know if the minute we sign a paper and say we're working on governance, I don't know if that's going to be enough for the commissioner to say, okay, carry on with engineering. I don't know if that's what she's going to say. Or if she's going to say, you better work out this governance thing first and keep your project on hold. I don't know.
How long is it gonna take to work out the governance? Any idea?
It all depends on the committee that is formed to work on that and how well that
Is that
process.
just a think tank?
The think tank, I think, is it's an idea of how to hash out those hard conversations so that when we're in committee work, we're not stalling a committee. That work has already been done behind the scenes a little bit.
I think my question again is that how can we move on WBRC when we don't know what's going to happen with the governance level?
Well, I'm going to be an optimist here and say that this board is going to want to take the department's advice, look at RSU language, and start moving forward with an RSU concept. And I think in doing so, I'm hopeful that the department will see how serious we are about this school project, and then will provide us, the stamp of approval to move forward. That's what I'm hopeful of. I don't believe it's going to be in the state's best interest to stall us for 15 years while we fight about governance. I don't know that that's something that's going to be good for them.
When do you think we'll know?
I would love to tell you that.
Fair.
I'm really convinced, because I know what we've been going through just on a small local level with the coronavirus, and Josh can talk to you about his, his workload. I know the commissioner must be buried with decision making with the governor about what they're going to do with schools, and so I know that's her priority right now. Valley Unified, I'm sure, is a sticky note on the corner that she'll get to when she gets to it. Not that we're a sticky note, but you get the.
It's okay.
Truthfully, I wouldn't mind going back with WPRC. That's just my feeling.
I'm not going to speak for one of the SAD 27 board members, but I do trust the opinion of Sarah Ashley, who is an engineer herself, and she's told me that she thinks that this is what this firm is really good for, is the actual engineering piece of it. So I know that that's something that made me confident when you have somebody in the field who's saying that.
And the firm they're working with, the Cunningham Group, that's it. I looked at that. That looks pretty good too. That's just my opinion.
Were you satisfied, Jake, with the information you got?
I did. It seemed really showy-ish in the fashion. Like, I don't know if it's, I feel like we're a little more utilitarian up here in the county, in the valley. And I don't know if we want all that glass everywhere, but as far as what they put out there, I think is great. And so that that brings up a question I have is for me being new on Valley Unified, I'm just curious, who are the stakeholders when it comes to some of the actual concepts associated with, we don't need all those windows, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to get some form of committee together. It's going to be a little bit more educator heavy, just because with concept design also comes the planning for programming. So the programming part of it is what designs the school, and I know that I backed off from site selection, but I'm going to be neck deep into this concept design because the programming is really important to me. But we will have various stakeholders as part of that. There have been many people who have visited beautiful schools that have gone, why? And even when schools are constructed, the stakeholders that attend that school go in and say, why? So we want to minimize the why as much as possible by having those conversations with the engineering firm and saying, this is Northern Maine.
So this would be like the June 15 thing, for example, that you're proposing would be, we could sit down and say, explain to us why it should be this way, and we could have a little bit of dialogue with them?
I don't think we're near that phase yet. I think right now, if we were to have them come back to us, is for them to basically explain why they're qualified to do this.
So then to Jake's question, as I understand it, we can pick them, but we're not moving, as far as we know, we're with this enough uncertain, we're not sure if we're going to move into phase two.
Choosing them at this phase does not mean that phase 2 is now fast forward. We don't have that power. The state department has that power right now. Only the State Board of Education can say move forward with phase 2, and we do not have that approval.
And all the actions that happen under phase 2 are governed by the roadmap, correct? That the state is dictating.
The 21 step, yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that would be steps 8 through 13, I think, or 7 through 13. 7 through 13.
13.
Is the phase 2.
12 is the next, 12 would be the next straw poll public hearing, and then 13 would be the referendum.
Yep.
I don't know, I think that, you've worked with WBRC for a year now. You know the company. To start all over with another engineering company, going through interviews and going through, to me, if it doesn't lock us in, I don't see any reason why we can't have this motion, have them come in the 15th of June, and you say we're not locked in, because the state's gonna decide that. I don't see that that's a problem to make a motion to go with WBRC.
And if you guys decide to go with them, I don't think that they need to come re-brag to you all about their quality. It's gonna be pretty hard for an engineering firm to mess up building a really cool school.
You're right.
I mean, this is what these people do.
Well, their name's on it too, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And every school they build is, you know, is their stamp of, this is what we do. Those of you that visited Hamden, that was WBRC, you know, they did that. And so you can look at that and say, okay, I know what I'm getting. Those of you that visited Sanford, that was another firm that we chose not to go with. Yeah, Sanford's still a beautiful school, so even, you know, another firm would do a great job too. We all knew site selection was gonna be a nightmare, and I don't know which engineering firm would have come out squeaky clean from site selection.
Good motion.
Do you want to motion?
I move that we retain the services of WBRC for the next phase of the project.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Three abstentions?
Can I ask a question at this point?
Yes.
Why does SAD 27's membership so oppose moving forward to WBRC?
If we're opposed to it, we would have voted against it. We didn't vote against it.
Well, you abstained. That's the same thing as voting against it.
Could have been close, I think, yeah. Well, the motion
Come
carries.
on.
Motion
Aren't we supposed to be united? When are we gonna get back to being united?
Gary, would you like to speak?
Well, I think I explained it first that, you know, we consulted with our attorney, and one of his biggest concerns was the governance.
We're gonna work on that, Gary.
Yeah, we are. The issue of the governance. And in the formation of the RSU, he is thinking that, because no one really knows what that's gonna look like right now, it may be that these tuitioning towns, Grand Isle, St. Francis, Sullivan, Allagash, Eagle Lake, Winterville, they may become part of that RSU. If they are such, then they should have some voting rights also, as we're moving into the second phase of this
I
project.
don't disagree with that a bit.
Well, we're taking that away from them right now.
They're not part of this group right now.
Right now, right. But as we move into the second phase, we're gonna have a different governance structure. So if that's the case, we owe Grand Isle, these other towns, we owe them the respect to have their say in what goes on the second phase. We've moved through the first phase.
If we were tuitioning students from Norwich Walk, would we have to do the same thing?
We're talking about a united valley. You just said, when are we gonna get united? This is where we're getting united. These
Well,
kids
I don't
from these
see it that
tuitioning
way.
towns were all excluded in the site selection.
And the
By
way
some
you're,
members of the site selection committee that said they do not count. That is not right. Every kid in this valley counts. If we are talking about a Valley United school, then they should have been a factor in the site selection process. They
Oh.
were not.
okay, time out. From what you've just said, I now know that the politicians have become involved, because that same statement was made to me over the telephone by John Martin.
Those arguments were made in site selection, Tom.
No,
And there was
John
certain-
Martin made that
There
same,
was certain,
same statement to me, saying that Eagle Lake was bent out of shape by the vote because they could not vote.
this has nothing to do with John Martin. I'll sit here and tell you that as long as we've been friends. We've been friends a while,
A
Tom.
long time, Gary, and I've done a lot for you.
Yes, you have, and I appreciate every bit of that.
Can I ask a question? Are you saying, Gary, that every one of those towns, St. John, Wallagrass, Eagle Lake, St. Francis, Grand Isle, would all have a
St. John,
representative
St.
on this
Francis.
board?
Depending how this RSU shakes out, I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen.
But then again, how can we delay this process here? Because it's not necessarily going to stay the WBRC. We're just delaying everything all the time because of different reasons.
The biggest
So-
delay
Stop
right
doing
now is
policy
the
for the
governance.
next one elected.
What?
The president might as well stop doing policy for the next one elected.
The biggest issue right now is the governance. So nothing is moving forward. I mean, you've heard Ben say that
Yeah,
already.
about the governance.
Nothing is moving forward until that's straightened out.
But what does
So,
that have to do with
We're
going
not,
for WFKT?
we're not hurting anything here by not moving forward on WFKT.
But as Ben said, they
Which
can
we
start
are
preparing.
actually.
They can start preparing. If we delay, we could be next fall before we're even having an engineering company prepare anything.
But they're not gonna prepare for nothing. If they're preparing, this billable service is going out there.
But no, but I'm sure that they have things that they can do to get ready one way or the other. If we delay all the time, we're gonna be into 2030 before we even have that. Because all of this, they're like delay tactics. It really upsets me.
Listen,
And,
tactics.
well, the
I mean,
site
we've come to a
selection-
point- We've come to a point where we need to correct the mistakes we've made.
What
to
are
move
the
forward.
mistakes made? The site selection committee met for a year, did their homework. They had a lot of information that was given to them and everything, and they made a unanimous decision. And now, as an afterthought, people are saying, well, we probably didn't do it right. So how long is this gonna go on?
We're talking about interlocal issues right now. We're talking about the governance.
The governance, yeah,
We're
and that's
talking
gonna be
about-
looked at.
And we're talking about the budget.
That's,
And representation on a board.
but you're gonna have to do a budget anyway, because we're the three schools together under one superintendent, so you gotta do a budget.
Can I just, so I think the governance of a school and the construction of a school are kind of two separate entities, and I'll just explain why. And if you look behind me on the screen, this was our application for this school project. And the three partners in that application were 2733 and Madawaska. They were the ones that got awarded the school. And I know it's all kind of coming to a mesh now, because we have the department saying governance, and then we have what we thought was, you know, a straight line with the construction. Those are melding now. I don't know how that changes. That as well, you know, because I agree with what Gary's saying, that, you know, we want to make sure we hear the voice of all our communities, even the ones that are not sitting around this table. But I just have to remind you, the project was awarded to you because it was your collaborative administrations that worked on it. Eagle Lake didn't work on this, and Allagash didn't work on this. We did.
Well, you had a straw poll that gave their voice. They approved in the straw poll. Those communities you're talking about.
Eagle Lake was not allowed to vote.
Well,
on the straw poll.
neither was Grand Island. Neither was Grand Island.
So we had a motion, we voted on it, it carried.
Okay.
Legal representation.
I just wanted to update the board that in my same conversation with Kate, she did confirm that Farrell, Rosenblatt, and Russell will agree to represent this board. They were very honest, though, that although they're highly qualified in doing all things, including interlocal agreements, they've done that before, RSU formations, they've done that before, they've done all that work, and they're quite comfortable with that. They were honest about when it comes to bond counsel for the construction of the school, that's kind of outside their scope, and they would have to back off of those conversations when we get to that point. So when we get to that point, we're going to have to look at how to proceed with legal counsel. But for now, we're good with that firm.
Business.
So I brought this to each board, the concept of a Valley Unified think tank. I was inspired by our PVE think tank when we had our administrators together. Thought I'd keep that think tank name alive, and so we've asked each board to consider having 2 representatives attend an initial meeting just to kind of air concerns with respect to where each board stands. I was very honest with each of you when I met with you that I think there's misconceptions about every board that each board has of the other. And I think it's important that we have this opportunity to have hard conversations. I'll say like Mr. Jandro said, sometimes it's gotta get messy before you can clean it up, and I think he didn't say it exactly like that, but kind of sort of. I think it is important that we give this a shot, so that we're having those conversations within the right context, in the right environment, so that we can move forward accordingly. And I do fully expect by the time we meet for the first time, I will have had alternate, so we're going to cover this RSU language in a bit, but I'll have alternate language that the department Paula Gravel is working on that is specific to a 7 through 12 RSU, not a kindergarten through 12, and the kind of slight changes that are not exactly like our Valley Unified Interlocal Agreement, but are more in that direction because we all have some non-negotiables like our elementary schools that we need to make sure are not part of an RSU formation. So I think that might be some of the first initial conversations. I think if we can hash out those non-negotiables, those fully negotiable things at this think tank, talk about what's important to each of us in our districts, what our community members are saying to us, and what we're experiencing when we're listening to our community members, what our staff members are saying to us. I think those are all important conversations. So for 27, I believe it's going to be Mr. Jandro and Mr. Jandro.
Yeah.
So Toby and Keith, and then they're a great country band as well. They're going to be representing 27. For Madawaska, it will be Miss Tammy and he said Mr. Dugal. And then for 33, Mr. Desjardins and Miss Lana Sear. Miss Lana Sear. Yeah. So I will be reaching out to those 6 members to try to schedule an initial meeting. I will try to facilitate that initial meeting, and then if we determine that we need a different type of facilitation to move forward, we can do that, and we'll decide whether or not those meetings have a future, or if the initial one is something that just was not a valuable use of our time.
I think worst case scenario, we at least figure out how we want to go.
Yeah. And there's no need for a motion on that. That's just information for all.
Okay. Any discussion on that? No motion. Okay. Budget hearing number 3.
Oh, before that, we have the RSU language. So I did give you a copy of the current RSU language that is in law. And I highlighted a couple of things just for the purpose of us talking for tonight. I don't want to read this whole thing out to you or go over the whole entire thing. But if you'll notice, under number 1, there is a first notice of intent that has to be filed with the commissioner. So when we have agreed as a regional board that we are moving forward, and maybe you can all tell me now, yeah, we're moving forward with RSU language, I can draft a letter of intent. It's simply going to say Valley Unified is pursuing, RSU, blah, blah, blah. We have to file that so the commissioner knows that this is something we're considering. Once we move past that notice of intent, a committee must be formed, and it does not give us exactly how that committee looks like or who it's made up of, but it just says that member municipalities, members of the general public who are residents of the proposed regional school unit should be part of that. What I would like to avoid, if at all possible, is having a 17-member board. I think a smaller committee would be great. However, we'll have discussions about what we feel is the best moving forward, and I may ask our legal counsel to weigh in on their experience and whether or not what their committees have looked like for other regions. So I'll reach out to them and ask that. And then you have to create, that committee has to create an actual plan. So the plan is outlined on all the steps. You have to talk about, you know, who's part of it, the size of the governing body, or the proposed governing body, the method of voting for that governing body, the composition, powers, and duties of the school committees that are created, the disposition of real and personal school property. A lot of our interlocal agreement language will come in useful here because a lot of that is already ironed out. The property thing and the indebtedness and all that is already part of our interlocal agreement. We don't have anything collaboratively that we own yet, so it's all going to be future focused on this regional school and moving forward with that. But you can see all the steps of the regional unit and how it's all planned out. For those of you that currently serve in SAD, it's almost identical to what an SAD is. So, you know, Frenchville, St. Agatha, the way that you share things and have voting rights among your two communities, same kind of concept. 27, same concept with your member communities. It would just be more communities and more sharing at this level. After we create the plan, that has to be approved by the commissioner. There is language here that your regional unit has to be more than 2,500 students. We do not have 2,500 students, but it does go on to say that special considerations will be made for geography and if you're enhancing opportunities or you have a unique situation. Our unique situation is the DOE is telling us we have to form an RSU, so I'm pretty sure the commissioner will not turn down our application for one, based on the fact that we have fewer than 2,500 students. And then in part C on page 3 out of 5 does, you know, kind of outline that we are a unit that's smaller than that, and that kind of outlines why we would be accepted for that. And then that goes through an approval process from the DOE, and then it would have to be approved at a referendum by our local voters. And this would not be 3 separate units having 3 separate votes. This would be a vote of the proposed RSU. So if our RSU was everything from Grand Isle to Allagash, everyone from Grand Isle to Allagash who's registered to vote would be able to vote on this thing. Everyone would be able to vote. If it's only the members currently of SAD 2733 in Madawaska, only those communities. It's whoever is part of the plan would be able to vote on it. And then once it's approved, and then we move forward with the RSU as planned. One recommendation, not a recommendation, excuse me, one thought that Scott Brown and I had when we were talking about RSU stuff is, and if we are allowed to work on RSU governance in parallel with the school construction plan. So if we're given the green light that as long as you're working on governance, you can continue with the school construction plans, it would be kind of neat to have the final referendum vote for this be on the same ballot as the school approval referendum. So you're voting for an RSU and you're voting for a Valley Unified Regional School, and then tweaking the language to say, you know, both must be approved or both are turned down, because the last thing that we would want is the regional school to be voted down, but now we're an RSU. And now we govern Wisdom, Madawaska High School, and Fort Kent Community High School, and that would just be a disaster. And vice versa.
The second worst thing would be to have a school with no governance.
The second worst thing would be we have a school, we have no governance, so we can't have students go there. So I think the two have to be on the same approval path.
So when you say that, it's a little over a year out.
Oh, we're over a year out anyway.
To develop an RSU.
That all depends on us. That all depends on us. But I know that the school phase 2 would be about a year out, based on how long it took the site selection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the format that the state is directing us to?
This is the law.
And this is pretty much the only form that we can take.
That's
I
what I was
remember from the meeting last meeting we had, right?
Yeah, all of the other governances have been do no longer allow new units to form under that, so any new units you see forming are RSUs. CSDs, they exist still, but not for new members. SADs, there are no more new SADs.
So we have no choice, we have to go with the RSUs.
Unless, you know, we have conversations and we're given some guidance that something new has come up, I don't know how many more years left in Governor Mills' term. I hear that our former governor is going to be running again in the next, I don't know. And I'm not a politician, but I think currently, yes, I think this is our only option.
And if something better would come up that would suit us better, we could always change
We were hopeful that this Education Service Center was the better option, and we were short. Peter's watching us.
And there's no grandfathering into that, is there? I think I asked that last time.
I mean, I would recommend Ben doing a notice of intent. I mean, I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Intent to form an RSU, Keith?
And if that does not commit you to anything other than, yeah, we're gonna start working on it. You know, that letter of intent does not bind you to forming an RSU. If we get down the road here and we just can't make this work and we have to explore extreme options, if there are any, we can hold back and say, this didn't work. So the notice of intent is just saying, hey, Commissioner, we're looking at this.
Do we? Each school administrative unit shall file a commissioner notice.
Right, so each board is going to have to approve that. So I'm going to be adding that to your local school board next agenda for approval of a notice of intent. It has to be approved by each three, not this board.
So that would be, that's not right to bring it up here, that we should bring it up to each individual board, right?
Right. Yeah. But if Valley Unified leaves here with a consensus that they think that's the best thing each board should do, that would be a good stamp of approval to get those approved quickly. So I'm not forcing you guys to come to consensus on anything, but I will be advising each of your boards to allow me to file a notice of intent because I think that's the only option we have to see if you know, we can resolve some of the concerns that our local communities have and the State Department has with respect to governance.
Is that gonna change at all? Is the Valley United?
I'm going to ask that in the language of the formation of the RSU board becomes the service center board as well. So your function will be to not only govern the new RSU, but govern the educational service center, which are the same. And that's just because I can't see having another board meeting.
Oh my God, you don't have enough board members to go around.
So we're gonna have an educational service center plus an RSU?
The educational service center will be the RSU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're just a 5-man board. We're boarded today.
Yeah. And I don't even know if that's going to be allowed, but that's my mindset is that the RSU business will be the exact same business we would be doing anyway.
It's allowed to have a checkbook, right? That's the difference.
Exactly. No, we have a checkbook, but
You
it's
won't
allowed.
be able to use it for a school book.
It's allowed to have students. Yeah.
So you're looking for a general consensus with everyone?
At each board meeting. or-
Is there anyone who has angst about me proposing that to your respective boards?
No,
Absolutely not.
Okay, so I think that's all I need.
don't need a motion.
No, I don't. Now it's the Lucy show. Lucy, turning it over to you.
What I'm asking is, I'd identical to what you received at the other meeting, with one correction. Tammy had picked up on the first sheet. The first sheet is what the new cost share calculations and how we come up with a breakdown of what each district will be assessed and the associated percentages. So MSAD 27 is 51%, MSAD 33 is 15.1%, and Madawaska would be 33.9%. The second sheet shows last year, or this current fiscal year, and the correction that I made is in the MSAD 27 column, the number I had last week meeting referred to students only, it wasn't the combined percentage, that's why it looked high. The percentages have not changed very much. They fluctuate a little bit because of valuations, they fluctuate a little bit because of students. The two offset each other really well. The big sheets are the budget columns, and I think, I don't know if Bev was the only one. The first column represents the budget that we're currently operating with this current year. The second column is what we have in the yellow. The second column is what we have proposed for next year. The big increase that I've factored in is a change in the legal because of the pending litigation. I've added 20,000 to each of these school budgets. So there's 20,000 in this one. There'll be 20,000 in the Madawaska one in SAD 33.
What did you say that was for?
That's for the legal fees for the pending litigation.
Okay.
We don't know what it's going to cost, and we have to have a number that.
And RSU work's gonna cost legal fees as well.
Cost money.
Right. So the other increases, in this budget, it contains 5 salaries. It has Ben, Giselle, Peter, myself, and Melanie, the food service director. We're the only ones that are really part of the Valley Unified at this moment. So it includes a small increase in salary, enough so that we can negotiate in good faith with our bargaining units. I have a 10% increase to health insurance. We don't know what the true cost of health insurance is going to come out. It usually comes out at the end of March, beginning of April. But in the meantime, we have to have something as a placeholder. Small increases in just the operating costs of the central office. So this is the central office for Ben, Giselle, Peter, Melanie, and I, just so that we have a budget to work with. When we're working specifically with SAD 27, we charge the 27. When we were specifically with Madawaska, we charge Madawaska. But as an operating central office, we have minimal costs that has travel, phones, it has association fees, and member dues. It also includes this specific board and the associated stipends. The vehicle operation and maintenance on the second page, that refers to the vans that came with the 3 tri-district vans, if we have any costs that are associated with repairing those. When we use them specifically for travel with the specific district, we charge that cost to the specific district, but when we're repairing the van, it would come out of this budget. And right now, there's still no vans, so there's very little repair. The student transportation piece at $2,500, that's to do with the transit bus. It belongs to Valley Unified, not the specific district, and that would be just a repair or, right now it's basically placeholder. There's revenues that will offset any additional costs, so if we rent it out for,
Like we rented it out to the Holton group a few months ago. They went down to Sanford. They had a rental for them.
right, so the rental, the cost of the bus drivers and the cost of anything pertaining to that trip are charged to this, but so are the revenues that come in when we charge the fee to the person that rents it, the unit that rents it. The food service operation piece is strictly Melanie and her costs as pertains to Valley Unified. This year, in the pink column, you'll see the $123,418. Those are the funds that are coming in from the state. That's the preliminary estimate. The Department of Education will review each year the superintendent's salary, the executive director's salary. Right now, they have changed the funding so that it includes the average state salary, which includes part-time, full-time, and has reduced our revenue. I'm hoping to see an adjustment to that, but I don't know if we will. The other costs are the financial software, so our Time Clock Plus, our Time Clock, and our financial systems, so our Power School and Power Technologies. Those will have an adjustment. They'll be done at the end of the year, but I won't have the numbers in time to be against this budget. So whatever adjustments they make for this current year will be against next year's budget, and will carry forward. So what we're presenting tonight is a budget of $694,553, with $571,000 assessed to the three members. And the last three columns on the right with the blue square are the associate members' individual contributions. So MSAD 27 would contribute $291,450. SAD 33 will be $86,327, and Madawaska will be $193,358. It represents about a 10% increase from last year, primarily because of legal fees and health insurance. It's still a very new entity. It's hard to estimate what the costs are going to be because we're evolving as we go.
Now, for your individual districts, if you consider the services you're getting for your share of the cost share, think about what those services would be if you had to afford them yourselves. That's how kind of I look at it. That's where the benefit is. And see, we're still smiling.
Just a question. Is this the way the state has always done it? Makes part-time and full-time? Come up with
That's a brand new thing that they just figured out to kind of reduce that
That's
number.
it's using.
It absolutely does.
Yep.
Because you've got anywhere from a part-time superintendent for a very small unit that may not have any schools. Like Allagash is very simple. They may charge $1,000 for a superintendent, whereas Portland may have a higher. But you add that $1,000 and you average it out over the numbers.
I questioned it, and I was given an answer that the range varies from the lowest is $1,500 for the lowest paid part-time to $165,000, the highest paid superintendent. So it's an average of everything in the middle of that. And I requested that an adjustment be made based on just full-time superintendent salaries, and I didn't get a reply.
So we'll keep pushing that button.
Thinking about it.
They're thinking about it.
Well, I think
It's on the list. Yeah.
they probably saw the salaries for the first year was, hey, we'll do this, and then they saw the salaries and said, why don't we reevaluate that?
Lucy, so if the health insurance comes in lower, how does that affect the SADs in Madawaska?
Right now, if it comes in lower, right now Giselle has based on the Madawaska cost share, and not cost share, but health insurance, and all of the other four are on the SAD 27 share. The cost, the budget here will not change for this year, but the carry forward, the expense would be charged less. We'll only charge what it costs. If there's any carry forward, it'll carry forward to next year's budget. So it'll reduce next year's assessment. And individually, each district, by the time that we go into and approve a budget, we will likely know what the cost increase is going to be, and I will factor into each district's budget.
Okay. Same thing with legal fees?
Legal fees, we're not gonna know until we
It's the
actually.
same thing, once we figure out if it's lower than expected.
Absolutely, and in this case, if, I've got $25,000 in Value Unified. So if the legal fees turn out to be $40,000 in this year, if I can find it within the rest of the budget, I will. But if I can't, legally, I'm not allowed to run a deficit in a budget. So because of the cost share, the 51, 15, 33, so any additional legal fees invoice that I would have, I would literally take it and assess 51% of it to MSAB 27, 15% to 33, and 33.9% to Madawaska. Just so, because that's really the only big unknown in here, is the legal fees. Everything else is relatively manageable. There shouldn't be a very big increase, but the legal fees is the big unknown, because we really don't know how much it really costs.
a work in progress, so.
This one
This is more final than.
this one here, we have to have a final one by March 15th,
Okay, that's what I was.
so that we can assess it in each district's budget.
Okay.
And then the other ones are still work in progress.
So like if there are changes, then you move that over to next year's surplus? Yeah, okay.
So I do have language behind me from our interlocal agreement. You're probably wondering why we were meeting so soon after our last meeting. The interlocal agreement actually says that the annual operating budget needs to be approved by March 15 of the year. It has to be a 7/9 vote. There is a clause though at the bottom that says, in the event that the board of directors fails to approve the annual budget by March 15, the executive director shall call an emergency meeting no later than March 31st. And that's just because we can't really move forward with our local budgets without this placeholder being in there. So that's why that language says that. I'm not pressuring you to make a vote tonight, but that is part of the interlocal agreement language as it exists.
Did we ever come up with any proposals for how we deal with the issue that you brought up last time?
Yeah, I think our
I think we ran out of steam pretty quick.
our resolution was, let's look at RSU language. I think that's basically how we had addressed it. Right now, and I'll just, I mean, when you're looking at $600,000 out of combined, 20-something million dollars with the three budgets, it's not going to make an impact if a local referendum fails, unless no, it just won't, because SAD's a portion of that is only 200,000. Madawaska's is 190, so it's not really that big of a deal. It's when the regional school is in operation, that's when we really need to have that ironed out.
Just a question, Jerry and I were looking at.
Yep.
What makes up that $3,800 increase in executive administration? A whole lot of them went down, and last year we appropriated nothing in a couple of items.
What page are you on, Tom?
I'll have to look at my laptop because I didn't print the account numbers.
It's those two lines, right, the 1860 and the 1500?
The thing is that the numbers are the same, how come they're not coded like?
It's cut off.
Oh, I was wondering.
Yeah.
You need bigger paper. Dr. Fraser, do you have anything?
The first, okay, so the 1,860,
The 18,
part of that,
3822.
I'm assuming you're not gonna ask about the decreases, so I'm gonna ask you about the,
no,
okay, the decreases were just adjustments in salary based on last year's estimate as compared to what this year's estimate is. The first 1,860 is workers' compensation. Last year I had not included a line for it. This year I did, because we have 5 salaries that will be assessed it. 1,500 is for conferences or workshops. So every time that, and this section is for Ben, Giselle, and Peter. So every time the 3 of them go downstate for any kind of workshop, this is where it gets charged.
It's going to be reduced in your local budgets, so it will be applied to the local budgets.
The $90 is an increase in anticipated telephone fees. The 1,000 is travel, room, and board. For some reason, Ben likes to go to Augusta.
But we never sleep over. We
Yeah.
live at 4 a.m.
I know.
He's good.
Still paying for that.
Are you spending $1,000?
And the 2,330 is dues and fees. As we create the VUESC and the boards and the associations that we belong to, they're charging us not only for as an association as being part of a board for MSAD 27 or Madawaska, they're also charging us for being part of a board of VUESC. And they're charging us for
Who's
liability
they?
insurance, whoever the company is. So Main State Management,
Okay.
the insurance company, you have liability insurance. So as a board, as a superintendent, you always have an additional cost because you now have a different entity.
Okay.
So those are those costs. So the first year is always a learning curve, and as I find out, I add it into the next budget.
So I feel like this is being on SAD 27 and coming to this board and going back to SAD 27, and I know we have these dates to look at, and they seem intimidating. I feel like I would appreciate it at SAD 27 to say, this is what your cost is gonna be, and let's talk about it. And then we can have those discussions at 27 and come back to this board and discuss our concerns. It seems like it's a little bit backwards now, and maybe that's why we're looking at the interlocal agreement and everything else that's going on, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Long story short is I don't really feel comfortable voting on a budget right now until we talk to SAD 27. I don't know what it was like last year for you guys. Did you guys have these concerns?
So
No?
I think that's why, not last meeting, but the meeting before, when we had our first read of this, my first question to you all was, are we comfortable with moving forward with the positions that we currently have in their Valley Unified? Because this whole budget makes up the 5 positions that Lucy's outlining. So I think it was our general consensus that, yeah, we need a superintendent, we need a...
No, that's fair.
No, then that's why I wanted to front load that, so that if there was anything not comfortable at that time, we could have had those conversations.
No, that's fair.
And I wouldn't want to add any work to you, but would it be possible to split this up and then each of our communities find out what it would cost us if we had the superintendent, the financial person, and all of that in each of our budgets? It would be a lot more than what this is costing us. That's what I'm saying. Would that be a big job?
You know what, what I always do is I try to use the 2 extremes as an example. So I'll take our smallest unit, SAD 33. SAD 33, you know, before this had a superintendent who was their business manager, who was their transportation director, their special ed coordinator. So they had one person doing a lot of hats. And you can probably speak to the last person to do it, Ms. Bernier. It was a lot. Ms. Bernier's salary and benefits was more than what's assessed at 33 now. You know, and then I look at SAD 27 on the other end of the spectrum. At one point, SAD 27 employed all of these folks themselves. You know, and so they were paying all of their salaries and all of their benefits. And now it's at a shared cost. So that's where your
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if Keith is concerned about going back to his board.
Keith might be concerned.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I wrote your name, Keith, down here.
I wrote your name down too.
Did you spell mine right? Yeah. No, I was thinking, you know, with his concern about going down back to each board, if we understand that if we go back and we do our superintendent and our curriculum coordinator and all that, it's certainly going to be more than what this is costing us.
Right. This is the efficiencies part of the efficiencies and opportunities, and I think for the most part we can all agree that those shared services 9 out of 10 times work to our benefit. There's going to be those times where it's like, well, I kind of wish we had our own superintendent, and that's fair, you know, because you're going to have hard conversations. But for the most part, our collaborative work has really unified our 3 districts to, you know, think, act, and behave like one. More than ever, we have teachers, you know, from Dr. Levac Elementary reaching out to a Madawaska Elementary teacher and Fort Kent Elementary teacher. It's nice, you know, and we're doing the same as well, figuring out our own niches as administrators. Peter doesn't step on my toes nearly as much anymore, and I don't step on Giselle's toes nearly as much anymore, because we're finding out where we need to function efficiently so that we're not doubling up the work, you know, but we're dividing and conquering.
Well, I guess my point is when you look at 55% of your salary is paid by the state.
Well, based on an average of the superintendent of the state, but yeah.
Exactly, so that's 55% less that each community has to pay. So there's definitely going to be a savings there.
And my salary's way out there.
Oh, I would imagine you'd get it, yeah.
Giselle,
I just, if I may, I'd like to respond to Jake's question about the budget and going back. I just want to compare it to the NAVAC board. We have a vocational center here where the 3 schools take part. And there's a board that was created 26 years ago or whatever number of years. We meet as a committee and we go through the NAVAC budget, and then the committee takes whatever assessment calculated on whatever the bylaws are, brings it back to their boards. And I think when we created Valley Unified, our mind was in that format. This board creates a budget and then the assessment then gets brought back. So the decisions are made here and the assessment is brought back, just like the NAVAC board. So I just wanted to explain that to Jake, and it functions pretty much the same way.
And based on our conversations with RSU, this may be the last time we have this process, because if we do have an RSU in a year from now, we're gonna get our own ED 279, we're gonna have our own money to work with, and our budget does not impede on 33 Madawaska or 27. It's gonna be separate budget. So this may be the last time we have this process this way. Then Lucy will have to figure out a whole
I'm getting my framework ready. In this budget, because it's only central office, there's very little moving parts, because it's operating, it's travel, it's cost of doing business. We're not renovating a building, we're not building a school, we're not buying vehicles. So in terms of, if you had to reduce it, there's not that much that you could reduce, because we'd have to change the way we'd have to reduce the amount of work and the amount of travel, it's really, there's very little to negotiate in a budget this small, because there's not that much included in it. As we become bigger, as we get the RSU, then you'll have pieces that you'll have input on in terms of, do we include it or do we not?
So if we vote to approve this tonight, and then we go, and one or more of our respective districts does not approve our overall school budget, are we able to come back to this, or is this untouchable?
We don't know. Right.
Currently, it's untouchable.
It would make sense to come back for the district that failed, but in the same vote, one or more will have passed, possibly will have passed. So what becomes difficult is going back based on the approval of one of those boards. And I think that makes it untouchable because one member has approved it. That makes sense? But again, the percentage assessed to your overall budget is so minor that I don't know that the risk is that huge. When you look at the overall MSCD 27 budget and look at what this is, and the same thing for the other two, you're not looking at a big portion of the budget.
How much was that ELA curriculum that we didn't do last year?
It was 3 years. It was funded 3 years.
27,000?
27 for each year.
Is that the new reading first program?
Yeah. And I haven't heard the end of that.
That's not coming out this year.
I guess what I'm saying is that's $27,000 we got last year.
Yep.
It's not.
We have several $27,000 items that we've got every.
I know what I'm saying, but I guess I'm saying it's everything's significant.
Everything is significant.
I will just put it out there that I cannot absorb any more work than I currently have. So having one less of these people, it's not going to be feasible. If I don't have Lucy, I don't know. I can't do this to this extent. And if I don't have Peter, and I have to work with the press all day long and innovative programming, I don't know. I'm not just advocating for them because they're my friends, but this is a team. And until we start to smooth the waters and figure things out, 5 years from now, can we look at a different concept? Absolutely, because then a lot of the noise is it's been quieted.
It's a learning process for everyone.
If I need to add anything to that budget, it would be Advil. There's a high need.
percentages
The
for each of
percentages
the smaller
per
towns.
town
that-
of each municipality.
SAT 27.
I have that somewhere. Fort and Madawaska are within percent,
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, we're like 35 of our
We're
city.
34, so we're pretty close.
But this budget is part of our overall.
This would become part of our overall budget. This would be a line like the tax center, if you remember doing that.
Yeah.
It would come in basically, so I think it's what I was talking about, it comes in the same way, it comes in as a line and you
Okay.
So Fort Kent's 35.9, Madawaska 33.85. And you see the other communities.
Canada.
New Canada's
6.1.
3.6, St. Francis 3.5, St. John 2.4, Allgrass 5.7, Frenchville 7.1,
Sure what?
7.1, and Senegat's 8.1.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the 50% evaluation, 50%
Yeah.
student population.
Okay. Thank you, Ben.
Population is, city 27 is 45.91, it's not broken down by town, it's just like this one.
Total students, MSC, 27 is total students, what?
Pupils right there.
86.5,
Oh,
we
yeah,
only have
okay.
half a student.
Average, tend to go back.
What's worse is combined, it was 1.5.
Right.
I could afford to lose half of me, so.
I know, right?
Are any other questions on the budget?
You need a motion.
If we're ready to approve, then I will need a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the budget submitted as submitted.
Motion for Tom,
I'll second.
second for Rose. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? So I'm going to suggest we take a brief break. Okay? Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Jake, how you doing over there? Got a new personality now. I had to erase Keith and put Jake in place.
That's okay. We have classes in here.
Does he have a beard? He said it's in here. He said it's in here.
I sat next to it.
Was it you? Okay. It's okay. Forgive me.
I get called. I get called a lot of things.
Yeah.
You don't.
Something to see.
How's Cliff today?
So am I.
But we sent it in.
You gotta work with
Second.
IT. We all gotta work together, and that's gonna be a hard
Karen
wall.
brought her down. Karen was gone tonight. Karen will be here just Sunday.
But there's gonna be
I took him for his eyes today. You know what that is? Everything's in there, just look at it. When you have cataract surgery, sometimes you get 2 and 3 years of surgery. There's a bubble that forms behind the lens.
I have 3 kids at home, it's hard to say.
And they burst the bubble. And it kind of.
I muted you, just so you know you're live.
That's why he hasn't been able to focus.
Muted?
I muted it, just so you know you're live.
Just keep it muted until we come back in session.
So we'll go through that.
And that's another thing. I
We're
think the
gonna
cameras
have March
are all blended.
26th
If there's-
back to
if the meeting
Wednesday.
is not a call to order,
And
there should be no
20
cameras.
degrees one eye.
Is it turned off now?
Yeah,
It's
just-
muted until we call it back,
but-
right?
Oh, feels good to stand up.
Now you guys are not even on.
Okay, perfect.
This is awesome.
The motion is to accept the budget as presented.
Second. Rose second.
I had second.
The discussion we're gonna have briefly is, our group, as you know, went out and chatted. We've become a little gun shy around making decisions without our whole board, as Jake had indicated earlier. We had a chance to chat a little bit. And I think in the future, we'll probably ask Lucy and Ben to just give us a sneak peek to our board before we come into this, so we can at least get a flavor of what is coming. We're really gun shy right now to do anything that our board doesn't support. So we caucused, we talked a little bit, and I believe we've changed our minds. So with that said, any other discussion?
One of the things that, because of the meeting dates between the last Value Unified Board meeting where you saw some numbers and this one, SAD 27 hasn't had a meeting in between, so we're going to work on making sure that those line up better next year, so that everyone has between the second read and the third read, everyone has a meeting between.
Of the budget.
To go look at the budget.
So this would go to each board?
No. Well, you guys had the numbers last meeting. This one went down a little bit because Lucy reduced a few things, so I'll be very diligent in making sure that, on the agenda is a review of the VUSC budget before you come to this board for approval, so that you can have those conversations with your folks.
We have a unique situation of having 5 towns, representatives from everywhere. It's nice to be able to at least get a tacit, like, this is okay, or I don't know how I feel about this. And I think we need to make a point as a board, as the 3 of us, to make sure it goes on our SAD 27 board, so everyone can take a peek at it in an official capacity in our meeting, out in the open, discuss the things we want to discuss, so that when we come in here, we don't feel like we're necessarily speaking for our board, because we're not even a majority of our board. We're bigger than your board. We wouldn't, if the 3 of us voted yes in our board, whatever was put forward would fail.
Do you have representatives like from St. Francis, St. John, and all of that
He's
on
our
your
new
board?
candidate. He's the new candidate.
Oh, okay.
And we're Fort Kent, but we've got St. Francis, St. John represented, Wallagrass represented.
The real Keith is St. Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The other names are
Yeah.
so we do have, and I sometimes forget that our situation isn't the same as yours or Frenchville's. You guys have a dichotomy in Frenchville and Senegal. We have all these different pieces. We had a discussion, I think.
How many on your board?
Okay.
We,
Just for clarification, at this time of year, I don't have the full budgets ready, like even in the other individual districts. So what I would be presenting to your boards about this time of year would be the Value Unified budget itself, but you would not have the full picture of what that would look like within your budget. I have no issue doing it either way.
I just think it's a good idea. I'd feel better if my board got to take a peek at it before we voted on it, that's all.
Yeah, no, I have no issue.
And as far as our board's go, I know it's gonna fall where it falls. So, okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn. By Tom Bell. 7:36. So we don't meet for quite a while. Our next meeting is gonna be all the way in June unless we have to meet. So if there is some news, either with the pending litigation or with RSU stuff or anything, I will call a special meeting. Otherwise than that, I'll communicate with you via email. Thank you, Ben. Don't steal my pens. Good pens.
Something on the budget.
These are the ones I use in the office because I can tell my originals from my
Tom and Deb.
I figured Bev would be in there right away. I thought so, I know you'd be the first one to say no.
We wouldn't have impressed that.
the first one. Yeah, it's. And I said, well, it's not.
I'll be in Fort Mill. I'll be in Fort Mill.
Can I?
She's the board president.